Susan, and I don't know why, because it's an incredible story. I've been so fortunate to do so many things, and anyway, this story happens in Vietnam, in the Back of Beyond, and you guys who are here for the monkey story know what the Back of Beyond is. And the Back of Beyond is you go to Vietnam, and then you keep going west, and you are in places that are as remote as the jungles around Port Moresby or something. I mean, it is so far out in the middle of nowhere that it's almost inconceivable. And that is where the Mountain Yards live. And most of you here, at my age at least, have heard the term Mountain Yards before. How many people have seen a picture of one? How many people have ever talked to one? Well, I'm probably the only one that has talked to one.
What did he say?
The Mountain Yards, I'll tell you that, that's part of the story. So the Mountain Yards live so remotely, they are not part of Vietnam, never have been. Vietnam's a construct. When I was a kid growing up, that portion of the world said French Indochina on the sphere maps and everybody. Vietnam's a political construct. And the Mountain Yards have always lived so far west and so far deep into nowhere that nobody went there. Except when there's a regime change in Vietnam or along the coast there, then the new regime would have everybody draw straws, and the guy with the short straw, they'd say, okay, you go collect taxes out west. And then his head would come back on a pike because the Vietnamese and the Mountain Yards did not get along at all. And normally, the only time they mix change of politics. And in the last 100 years, Vietnam was run by the Dutch, and then the French, and then the Japanese, and then the French again, and then us, the Americans, and then after we left in 75, the Chinese invaded again for the bazillionth time. Vietnam is a beautiful sea level country for the most part, with wide open beaches, beautiful navigable rivers, easy to take over. It's been invaded by everybody in the world. I swear to God, in the 1300s when Angkor Wat and the Angkor City was the biggest city in the world, I bet they overran Vietnam. Everybody does. Because it can also fill a third of the rice bowls in the world. I mean, it produces rice, so everybody goes there. All the pictures that most of you have ever seen of a Vietnamese are those with Chinese genes. They're small, they're oriental, they're everything. Mountain Yards are black, blacker than most normal blacks when we refer to blacks here in the United States. It's not unusual to meet 6'4" Mountain Yards with blonde hair. I mean, they are genetically so different you would not believe it. And I'm giving you this because you have to know how far out there you are when you're talking to a mountain yard. And the Mountain Yards lived this existence for thousands of years, genetically isolated and physically isolated and happy as clams out there. And then modern weapons following World War II, plus the independence of Vietnam, kicking out the French. Ho Chi Minh decided he needed to circumvent the mainland South Vietnamese, so he started encroaching on Mountain Yard territory, and he did it with modern weapons, which at that point the Mountain Yards were still crossbows and knives, and still very effective, I might add. But Along come the Americans in 1960, and it was a match made in heaven. The Americans loved the Montagnards. The Montagnards loved the Americans. We provided security for all their villages. We provided medical care that they'd never had. We provided guns and unlimited supplies of ammunition. And they, somewhere in the Pentagon, somebody made a critical decision. I don't know who it was, I have no idea. They decided that if we're going to interact with the Montagnards, we're going to do it with 6-man A-teams, which you've all heard of as Green Berets. These are high-ranking, non-commissioned officers that are cross-trained in everything from medicine to weaponry. And they're only 6-man teams. They go into a village with 200, 300, 400 Montagnards, and they did the critical thing that we seldom do. They learned the language, and the Montagnards speak a completely different language than Vietnamese. Bears no resemblance at all. It'd be just mumbling to anybody else. So the Montagnards loved the Americans because we armed them, and then they could fight back against this encroachment that was happening out in their territory, trying to create what is known as the Ho Chi Minh Trail. You've all heard about it all along. Well, America and the Montagnards started to get very successful at what they were doing. And the Montagnards liked it because what they were doing was killing Vietnamese, and that's something they enjoyed doing. And Americans liked it because they were interdicting the flow of weapons and crap coming into South Vietnam. And I liked it because it was absolutely unique. Only a helicopter would get you where I went. Only a helicopter. The technology to get where I would go only exists in a new turbine-powered helicopter. Can't even take a piston in there. It's got to be a turbine, because. And on the day in question, we have now moved into my story. I'm sorry. I took off from Dalat MacP, and they said, here's 2 guys, and they need to go talk to an A-team, which is 6 Americans, in this Vietnamese, in this Montagnard village, over that mountain range. We can't tell you exactly where it is, but the 2 guys know. So I load these 2 yahoos in my helicopter, I fill up with gas, and we head west. And we climb up over an 8,000 or 9,000 foot mountain, which is completely covered with 3 canopy jungle. You lose an engine, you're gone forever. I mean, it's just, that's it. Climb up over there, and then we drop down more than a mile into a tight canyon with a big river running through it, and there's a gravel bar, and I land on the gravel bar, and right next to the gravel bar, which is the intersection of another river coming into one, is an armored Montagnard village. Gates, barbed wire, everything, and I'm just sitting literally on a gravel bar outside the gates. Shut everything down, the 2 guys take their briefcases and they walk in to talk to the A-team. My crew and I are sitting there. It's probably 10 o'clock in the morning in August of 1969. I'm a brand new aircraft commander. My shit does not stink. And we're just sitting there doing nothing, and a very nice Montagnard, about 6'4", walks out, and he says, hi, you guys don't have anything to do. I know these guys are gonna be here for a while. My village is having a wedding, and we would like you to be our guests of honor, and you are all invited to come. And my crew chief, Rob Mignard, and I looked at each other and said, well, yeah, sure. And the crew chief and door gunner looked at each other and said, not on your life. So they stay with the helicopter. We walk with this very nice guy. We go into the armored village, walk down a street, and at the end of the street there's a house, and there's houses on either side of it with porches. And they set us down on a porch and very politely introduced us to a bunch of village elders. We're sitting in very nice chairs, not we're sitting in chairs, we're not on our ass. And the elders are very nice, and they're all smiling, and we smile. And then they hand us a gourd about this big. You know what gourds are, and this one has a hole and a straw in it. We're sitting in our chairs with these gourds, and it's tasty. I have no idea what it is, but we're toasting the elders of the deal, and then the other porches are occupied by a whole bunch of other people. Pretty soon down the street comes bride and groom, and they are dressed to the nines in clothes you would never see in a Mountain Yard Village except on a wedding day. And they stand there in the street facing the elders, and there's some people come and do some officiating, and we're all drinking out of the gourds, and it takes maybe 10 minutes to have this service occur, and then they get up and they bring chairs out for them, and they turn and sit with their backs to us. The officials go away, the whole city kind of piles in behind them, and everybody in the city pulls out a brass plate or a copper plate varying in size from this big to this big, and it's held with your hand just like this. And unlike a pie plate, which comes across the bottom and then goes up at an angle to the edge, these have a 90-degree angle in them. Now, I've been drinking at this point, but I watched. And everyone, and it's men, women, and children. And Rob and I kind of look at one another, and they begin to play for the married couple. I have never heard a sound like it. I never will again, because I don't know how you would get to a Mountain Yard Village to do it. I've done some research. The Vietnamese have a similar type of instrument, but it's completely different. And the sound made varies from where they hit it and how they hit it. You can hit it with a knuckle and make one kind of noise. You can run your fingers on it and make another kind of, and the little kid and the adults are all playing very, very sophisticated music. This is something that they have learned genetically through their lives, and they play it the most wondrous music I've ever heard. The only way I can describe it is harp combined with xylophone. Those are the sounds that take the best harp you've ever heard and the most range you've heard in a harp, and then add xylophone to it. That's the sound they make. And they played this entire melody, this entire production together, and ended on the same note. I mean, men, women, and children. They played it, and they were done, and they all had a part to play. I was speechless then. I am speechless now. I have never heard anything like it. I would give anything to have been able to record it on a cell phone or something. And, I did, obviously, but we sat through that. Our gourds were empty, and the interpreter came and helped us say goodbye to all the seniors, and then escorted us back out to our helicopter. And now there's a postscript to this if you've got time to hear it, because I'd like to tell it to you. So now, Rob and I are out at the helicopter. There's nothing to do. The guys are still in their deal, and the interpreter says, he said, when you leave here, you're gonna get in your helicopter, and he said, it's gonna be 15 minutes or so, and you'll be at Dalat Mac Bay. All you gotta do is climb over those mountains, drop down, and there's a bunch of people here who would really like to make that trip. And if you could take them, you'd save them 3 weeks of arduous climbing. And I believe, because I know what the terrain was. And even though they know the trails and they know everything, it was 3 weeks to get from where I was. 15 minutes later, I could be where they wanted to go, or they could walk for 3 weeks. So I'm fat, dumb, and happy. And I said, well, hell yes. We'd love to help you. Load them up. So about that time, my two guys come out. They get in the helicopter. We're ready to go. Great. I said, we're going to have some passengers. All of a sudden, the whole village ends up in my helicopter. I mean, you know how crew chief and door gunner, they each have a little place where they sit with their machine guns and stuff? There were whole families in there with them. And they just stuffed in the helicopter, and I said, bring it on, you know. So we lit the fire. And this is the only time, there were only 2 times in my life where this ever happened. I'm flying the best, strongest ship in our outfit. And I'm a new AC, and I've been drinking. And so I crank this thing to the max. I put it on the wall, and I pull the pitch all the way up. And the helicopter doesn't even shudder. It doesn't move. It doesn't jump. It makes a whole bunch of sand and dust, but it doesn't even move. So I put this thing back down, and I asked the interpreter to come back over, and I said, look, we have a problem. And I said, I'd love to take them all, but I can't. You're going to have to peel some bodies off here. And he'd watched the whole thing, and he realized how bad it was. So they're pulling people off there, and the fights are breaking out. There are people that know that if they get pulled off the helicopter, they've got to walk for 3 weeks to get where they're going. But they're ruthless. I still have families in each gunwell, and people and animals and just all sorts of stuff. But so I light the fire again, and I pull it up, and a normal hover is 3 feet. You get it up to about 3 feet. But I get a foot, and I'm pretty proud of it. Now I look down, and N1 is 103%. 103%. That's everything. And then my N2 is it's supposed to be at 66. I got it at 67. I'm screaming, and the torque gauge is wrapped around it, looking funny, and I've got a foot. Idiot, new aircraft commander. I just kind of breathed on it, and we just eased out off the rocks, and we're out into the middle of the river. Before I know it, we are hovering down the river. We don't have any horsepower. I can't run. All I can do is hover. I'm fully committed. I'm hovering down the river, and I realize that the cyclic is hitting the back stop. I have no ability to slow it down. I have no ability to pull it up if the nose drops. I am just screwed in every sense of the word, and I'm going downstream. But in helicopters, when there's a magic number, and when you get to 18 knots, true airspeed through the air, all the air going into your rotor system is fresh air. And your rotor system gains a tremendous efficiency, like 18%. I mean, it's big. And you'll hear that rumble when it happens. And sure enough, I'm headed downstream, but I get the rumble, and we start to climb. And I'm just, oh, I can't, but we aren't climbing like this. I could have had the 2 guys come out and got in the helicopter. I could have climbed out there at 2,500 feet per minute. I mean, boom, virtually straight up if I needed to. I'm not doing 100 feet per minute. And I'm easing down this river. Now I have translational lift, so I've gained some efficiencies, so I'm actually climbing, but very, very slowly. And I'm going down this river with 3 canopy jungle on both sides. There's no rocks, there's no more sandbars. I'm going down the river, which is aimed the wrong direction, because that's where the enemy lives, is down the river, and I am going there in a helicopter that can't climb out of its own shadow. And here's the problem. If you turn a helicopter like that, you lose altitude. I haven't got enough to lose. So So I finally ease clear up against the jungle on the right-hand side because we are gaining altitude. The valley gets a little wider and a little wider and a little wider. And finally I realized that I better be able to speak Cambodian pretty soon, or I gotta turn this mother around. So I get just high enough and I ease into this, and I've got to judge it because there's another side to the river. And I make this the most controlled, perfect turn I've ever made in my life. Slow, easy, smooth. I don't lose 1 foot altitude. And I come around and I'm headed back up the river, and I'm still gaining a little bit altitude. And the only thing I'm gaining is the fuel I'm burning on. And I'm burning fuel at a tremendous rate because I've got everything maxed. I haven't gotten to lower anything, but I keep climbing. Now I'm going upriver, which also has a downside to it. There's a limit to how far upriver I can go. But I get up and I get up and I get up and I get up and I get over to the side and I do another one of these beautiful controlled turns, wider this time because I'm up higher. But I have to go over 8,000 foot mountains, and I started at probably 2,000 feet, maybe 1,500, so I got a long ways to go. Now, instead of just pulling pitch, popping over the top, dropping people off at POL, I'm running out of fuel. And my alternatives are very, very limited. But I get it turned around and we continue to climb and we're burning fuel off. And helicopters, the ones I flew, have 2 hours of range no matter what. And then they have what's called a 20-minute warning light. And when it comes on, in theory, you got 20 more minutes of fuel. Well, I'm burning fuel at a hellacious rate, so if I get 10 minutes out of a 20-minute warning light, I'm thrilled, I'm sure. It hasn't come on yet, and I make the turn, and to cut a very long story short, I come around and I'm able to see a notch in the mountains, and I coordinate the climb, and we go through the notch in the mountains, and that's when the 20-minute warning light comes on, and I'm on a downhill slide to the airport. I have another 10 minutes and I'm on the ground. Everybody's happy, but the part of the story I wanted to tell you is that we did a head count when we got to the other end. And pilots talk about people on aircraft as souls. If you want to know, all pilots do. It's how many souls on board? That's the question. And when we got there, we counted the men and the women and the children, and we had 22 souls on a U-8, which is, I've never heard anyone who's done it, and 1 goat, 1 pig, and a crate of chickens. And I learned an awful lot that day.